Okay, we are back. Everyone, thank you guys so much for being patient with us for our technical difficulties. We're dealing with technology and it does its own thing sometimes. And today we're going to have our conversation about data centers. And again, we're joined by our hosts, myself, Sherman, Tanya, and we are also joined by Levon. And I'm just going to get into it. I'm going to reintroduce our host in case our guest, in case anyone missed it. We have Julie Bolthouse with the Virginia Data Center Reform Coalition, who is a leading voice helping communities and lawmakers rethink how data centers are planned, approved, and monitored across the Commonwealth. Angie McCarthy is the Maryland Conservation Advocate with Nature Forward. Angie's work focuses on responsible data center development, tree canopy, and forest conservation, and advancing common sense environmental policies that serve all Marylanders. And David Arndt is the co-chair of the Maryland Legislative Coalition Climate Justice Wing. David's advocacy connects climate, equity, and accountability, pushing for state legislation that ensures the transition to clean energy is both just and sustainable. We're going to dive into what's really happening on the ground here in Virginia and Maryland. And I'm going to go ahead and start with Julie. Virginia has been the ground zero for the data center boom. What's been the most significant consequences of that growth? And what has been the most significant consequences of that growth? And what blind spots should Maryland counties like Prince George's avoid repeating? And I think you are muted.
There we go. Sorry about that.
No problem. Thank you.
So, Virginia, as you said, has been ground zero for data center development. We have seen the largest concentration of data centers in the world develop here in Loudoun County. So, the region that I cover, so I work for an organization called Piedmont Environmental Council, and then I help to organize and run the coalition that you mentioned, the Virginia Data Center Reform Coalition, which is 40 plus organizations in the Virginia area focused on this issue of needing state level oversight and transparency around the data center industry. So that area that we cover, Loudoun County down to Albemarle, we've seen an explosive amount of growth of data centers. We've had data center growth since the 90s, so I want to emphasize it's changed drastically. So the data centers that we had back in the 90s up to, 2015 or so, 2010 were much smaller. This was like your back room kind of, computer servers. Now we have these 100,000 square foot gigantic concrete warehouses filled with servers using nearly a city's worth of power per building, and oftentimes with multiple buildings in a single campus. And so it's totally different level of impact. And with that has come what we're seeing is once we get one data center, we very often get many more in the area in which
Mm,
that data center was approved. And so we're seeing numerous transmission lines, generation facilities that are needed to provide all the power for these data centers. And then, of course, the air quality impacts that are associated with those generation facilities like gas plants, but also the air quality impacts that are associated with the generators and the noise that's associated with the buildings and the generators. And then we have the water consumption, and we're getting concerned about that and trying to find out more information about how much water is being used in different watersheds like the Potomac, the Rappahannock. Of course, the Potomac is shared with Maryland, so that's of import to your listeners probably. And then like the Rappahannock and the James and others that are also pulling water for these data centers. So basically, it's everything. It's the ratepayer impact. It's the increase on our power bills that we're seeing. It's, all these different impacts, pushing out other types of development, rezoning from residential, where we need residential development, we need housing, and rezonings from other types of businesses like our industrial flex space that was supporting our agricultural community, like bottling facilities or um, cold storage, things like that, that we needed in those industrial zones is all being
Right.
rezoned to data centers. So that's what we're seeing in ground zero. And that's
mhm.
what we would warn other communities to watch out for is once you get one, you have to be willing to shut the door on more if you don't want your entire community overrun with data centers.
And let me follow up with that.
Yeah.
Like, how does the community shut the door? Because equal protection of the law would provide for if one can be there, you can't prevent another, or it's, the government is now. picking and choosing.
So you have to limit where these data centers can be developed. So you say, for example, you pick an industrial zone that makes sense, that is close to, power lines and fiber, where you're not going to have huge impacts to communities, you're not next to residential schools or anything like that. And you limit it and you say that's the only place. We're not entertaining rezonings in other places. We're not entertaining data centers in other places. And also require a special use permit even within that area that you've limited it to, because the technology is changing so fast that one data center is not the same as the next data center. And so you might be getting the data center with the small modular nuclear, or you might be getting the data center with the gas plant, or you
Mhm.
might be getting a data center
Hmm.
that's actually fairly small and is supporting an academic institution next door and is only like 10 megawatts, which is small in the size that we're seeing now. We're really seeing more like 60 to 90 megawatts, which is the amount of power a small city would use. So it really, that's why you need to have that level of control with a special use permit, because what that means, what does a special use permit mean, in simplified terms? It means that there's a public hearing and people actually get to see the application that's not hidden behind NDAs, and the public
Mhm.
gets to comment on it. And also, the elected officials really have to have more of a transparent dialogue in front of the community, and it doesn't just become all about the revenue that might be brought in. That
Thank
makes
you.
sense.
Yes, yes, it does. Thank you so much. And for Angie, you work at an intersection of policy and sustainability, from solar development to conservation. What does responsible data center growth actually looks like on the ground?
Yeah, that's a great question, Sherman. And I can kind of go off of what Julie was saying at the end there about limiting the zoning. Some of the best practices that we're looking for in Maryland is restricting all by right development. And the reason why we are having these issues in Prince George's County right now with the Landover Mall decision is because in 2021, the County Council of Prince George's County voted unanimously to build by right. So that means that data centers can be built in rural zones, they can be built where your children's school is, they can be built in your neighborhood.
Mm.
It really opened up the door of where they could go. So when we're talking about uh, best practices and what we want to see in Maryland, we need to be asking ourselves, how do we ensure that these are good neighbors? Because just the same as you wouldn't want a large industrial warehouse next to your family or to your grocery stores and such, those are the same principles that would apply for data centers. So happy to go into that more, but as we go on.
Thank you so much. And um, Dave, I definitely wanted to ask, David, I wanted to ask, you've been pushing for climate and social justice at multiple levels of government. What makes data centers a justice issue as much as an environmental one?
Well, when you look at several of the things that data centers do, one is in particular is raise the electrical rates for all consumers. And if you look at people in underserved, overburdened neighborhoods, when you have 30 to 40% of their income going for electricity the way that it is, and then you look at, hey, we're going to double the electrical rates, this is impacts them tremendously. And the way data centers impact their rates is uh, we're going to need a whole lot more electricity to run these things. For example, in Prince George's County, if we do the Landover site, that site could actually, if it's built all the way out, could use 1 gigawatt of electricity. That's more than the city of Baltimore. And to do that, we need to run more power lines. That's distribution transmission lines. We need to buy more electricity. And electricity is a supply and demand market. And if the demand goes up tremendously and so quickly, we don't have the supply for it. Therefore, costs go up. And we all pay that bill. And people with a lot of money don't suffer that much when the bills go up to heat and cool their houses. But again, people with low to moderate income are going to suffer tremendously because of this. And also to put in these new power lines, the way that the system's set up is we all pay for it. So that's a shared cost too. So the data center people are paying somewhat for it, but we are all paying for that. And the Office of People's Counsel says that the rates, the way they've gone up in Maryland, about 60% of those rate costs can be attributed to data centers directly.
Yeah, a lot of people were complaining about their electricity bills. I don't know if it's hit us, if that's partially because of it or the rates, but um, we're already having a hard time with it. And to compound the data centers onto it, it's going to be a time. And are there any sustainable resources that data centers are moving towards? Does anybody have any idea about that that could lend a voice to that?
Well, there are some sustainable practices that can be out there. So, and part of this is unfortunately, there's no rules or regulations that are around that. So, we'd
Mhm.
like to say data centers, if you're coming, bring your own electricity, but make sure that it's clean electricity. Make sure
Mhm.
that it's done with solar, wind. Make sure that you're helping the local communities. Help them to put community solar in and other practices there. Look at the water usage and say, how can we reduce that because we're all going to pay higher water bills? So there's a lot of things that can be done. Look at these large generators. Like if we really build up Prince George's County, that could be 600 to 800 large diesel generators that are going to be running. Uh, some of them run
That's
once
it.
a day for an hour for maintenance purposes. And imagine living next to something like that, that there's
Mm.
always a diesel generator running. And then imagine when the power goes out and you got 600 of them running. Imagine how that's going to impact the neighborhood. So
Wow.
there's things like batteries and other things that can be done. But right now, there is no mechanism to force them to do that.
Right. And on that topic, that brings up another question from now. Um, is there any national framework that's emerging, or are there any communities like Prince George's on their or are Prince George's are communities like Prince George's on their own with this? Is there because this is a problem that so many municipalities and so many states are facing right now, how they're being developed. So does anybody have any input on a national conversation with data centers?
So the challenge is that at the national level, we're not really seeing a lot of support on this issue. And in fact, what we're really seeing is streamlining and fast tracking of the electrical infrastructure that's needed and a heavy focus on fossil fuels rather than renewables. And so what I would say, and this is what I've told localities here in Virginia, these decisions are made at the local level. And
Mhm.
as much as we're trying to get state reform, right now there is no state oversight. And I don't think you guys have any state oversight in Maryland either. And what I mean by
I
that
think
is,
the study for the environmental was vetoed by the governor. Or yeah, so
yep,
okay, so
exactly.
That's
Yeah, so we
correct.
don't have it.
Yeah. And I would just emphasize what I mean by the lack of state oversight is that we need to have both the locality approved. Like we don't want to take the community out of it. We want the local community making the decisions about how they develop and, the siting kind of considerations, setbacks and things like that. But we need state oversight around the electrical load, the impact that has to the grid, the impact that that has to the ratepayer, and also regional water supply planning. Those things should be evaluated at the state level. And right now, it's not happening for two reasons. One, there's no transparency, so nobody knows how much power they're really using until they're using it, and we only have that information in aggregate. And
yeah,
then
because you have to like go through FOILs and MPIEs in order to get information and cross-reference it to determine exactly how much is being used because they say it's proprietary information. So
exactly. And you also you can't really get detailed information about a single data center. You usually can only get it in aggregate anyway.
Mhm.
And so you have no information, you have no transparency. And then the second thing is you have no oversight, you have no review at that state level, and the localities aren't really capable of looking at these kind of issues. Like they don't have a model like PJM has or like the utilities have to see what is the impact on the grid, what is potentially going to be the impact to the ratepayer. That has to be reviewed by like we call it the SCC here. It might be the PUC there, but it's your utility review agency. And so they need to be actually giving you information about that and reviewing what the situation is before we are allowed to just bring these massive gigawatt campuses online.
Mhm.
And
And
if I can,
Angie, mhm, go ahead. Go ahead.
oh, I was just gonna say, and if I can add to Julie's point there, and Sherman, your question was about, is there a national uh, sort of
Framework.
movement going on.
Mhm.
Uh, if we can toot our own horn here, Nature Forward recently set up a data center advocacy course, and uh, the reason, and we opened it up for folks across the nation. And the reason we did this is we recently had a conservation cafe on the impact data centers have on our public health, and we had people from 30 states. Uh, Sign up for that. So there's a huge appetite for this knowledge, for this reform, because as Julie said, we're not seeing those guidelines being set by the federal government. And because it is such a locality issue, we really need to train our residents and our citizens to understand what their rights are, understand what the best practices are. So really happy that we're on this podcast today to help further that more. But yeah, we did a course on data centers. And at the end of the course, what we're going to do is a class on how to start your own statewide coalition and how to actually do this work on the ground in your locale, because we know it's a lot bigger than just in Maryland and Virginia.
Yeah, absolutely. And for the longest, everybody was trying to figure out what is this cloud thing because everyone had, oh, it's in the cloud, it's in the cloud, and you're like, well, where's the cloud? And now we're starting to see where the cloud is. We said there's no imaginary cloud that is storing all this information. It's here on the ground, it's in your communities, and what we do from here going forward is going to determine so much, the quality of our health, how we live and how we travel and stuff like that because like you say they're spreading everywhere and it's a huge concern to the community. And so one thing I do want to have to I do want to ask, in Maryland, counties are moving fast to attract investment. What role should advocates and everyday residents play to ensure those deals benefit people and not just companies?
I think you need to ask questions. That's the number one thing is asking questions of your locality when these projects are being proposed. First of all, it'd be nice to have zoning in place and actually be limiting where they are and requiring that special use permit. But assuming you do have that in place and there is public hearings and you do have the opportunity, ask those questions. Ask how much water is it going to use? What are the emissions going to be? What type of generators are they going to have on site? How much water are they going to use? Is it going to be where's the source of that water going to be coming from? Is it groundwater? Is it municipal water? And then also questions about the wastewater. What is the effluent coming out of it going to look like, and how is that going to be managed? Is the wastewater treatment facility ready for that? Because it might have higher salinity because it's using evaporative cooling, things like that. So there's a lot of questions, and there's a
Mhm.
huge list that I think Nature Forward has one on their website. We have one on our website for citizens to kind of go through and see like what you should be asking.
And I
I have
definitely
a
want to talk about the
question.
financial portion of it because a lot of locales see it as being lucrative, and why when parking planning here in Prince George's County, when they presented it to us, Tanya and I attended the one in South County, and they were asking, what do we want to see associated or attached to the data centers? They asked, did you want parks or some form of, covered in
Well,
trees, or did you want a farm? Different things. So
yeah.
what did Virginia do? And is it even healthy to have anything in that vicinity, in that parking space or green space, whatever it is that they try to create?
So basically, you're asking like what kind of incentives were we getting
But
for
that was
the
part of it.
development?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, definitely. But
So
were the incentives worth it as well?
yeah, okay. So there is revenue that potentially comes in from the servers that are it's property value, but it's mostly from the equipment in the facility. So it's those very expensive NVIDIA chips and servers and equipment in the facility. And so that brings in the revenue to the locality. However, localities need to be really cautious because that revenue stream is very variable because It is dependent on them replacing those servers. It's dependent on, like, in other words, if they keep them for a very long period of time, they depreciate very quickly because they're electronics. And so the value that they're collecting in revenue actually decreases significantly. Then you also have, different rate structures in different localities. So one locality, like for example, we have very rural localities in Southwest Virginia that barely have any taxation on this stuff. And then you got Loudoun County with a pretty high tax rate on this stuff. So you have to pay attention to what is your tax rate? And then what kind of incentives are you handing out? Like right now, Virginia is giving $1 billion tax break at the state level, the sales tax exemption to these data centers. And so that's a lot of money that's lost and that we're not getting from data centers that arguably would have been locating here anyway, because they want to be in what is the world hub of data center space. It's basically the Wall Street of the data center industry. So there's that. Then in terms of, what kinds of incentives do you get for the community? There's been data centers that have offered things like funding for affordable housing or, a training program for the local school system or things like that, a contribution to the fire department. But those are very short-term
Right.
benefits for very long-term impacts. And the other thing to keep in mind, this technology, this is why I say it's very variable, is because this technology could change. And then
Right.
what are you left with? This is not like
Hmm.
an office building that can be changed into a different company or a different use. It could become retail or residential potentially with some minor adjustments. This is a building that has no windows. That is a big, giant concrete structure with massive amounts of electricity coming on the site and probably had a bunch of fossil fuel storage, on site tanks of gas and diesel fuel. This is not a site that you're going to be able to even knock down and redevelop easily as residential because you've got giant
Wow.
substations, transmission lines, and everything. So it's really not adjustable if this technology changes. And I'll shut up after this because I know I've been talking a lot, but I think it's really important to keep in mind because we kept talking about the cloud and how these data centers are needed to support things like this meeting that we're on right now. I would argue that we are in a bubble and that the amount of data center space that we are building is based on speculation around AI. It's not for cloud storage. We have far surpassed. I actually heard a representative, I believe it was from Meta, at a data center conference who jokingly said, "We have built enough data centers to store all the cat videos that anybody could ever want to make for the next 1,000 years. We have plenty of cloud storage space out there. What we're building for is the future of AI." But what's worrisome about that is the future of AI is very speculative. And are we sure we're not massively overbuilding? Because if you start to look at how much we've put on the ground globally, not just here in, Virginia, but all over the world, it's really quite an astounding increase in space, well beyond what we probably will need for cloud storage for many, 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 many years to come.
Tanya.
Yeah. Whew. Look, sounds a little troubling, but it sounds like you're saying, based on where we are in Prince George's County, and I know right now our council has put things on hold. We need to start lobbying at the state level to try to get something first, um, to set a framework at the state level. And then from there, build on that locally. That should, and is there a list that you have also that has the questions that we should be asking our state legislator? So we build that right framework that will trickle down to the local.
I yeah, we several good things in there, Tanya. I think we need to be working at both the state and the local level. For Maryland, a lot of these zoning decisions come down to counties, and depending on your city or your town, it'll depend there. So we need to be working at both a state level and a county level. The state can put in different reporting requirements or different study requirements, like the data center study bill that Sherman mentioned earlier. That's what the state can do. We can also put pressure on for more renewable energy. We can take down red tape for different sorts of energy build outs. But at the county level, that's where we're going to be able to put in those zoning. And that's also where we're able to make a lot more tax decisions. For example, when Julie was talking about Virginia's tax incentive, I went onto the comptroller's website, the Department of Commerce, excuse me, the Department of Commerce's website, and there's actually in Maryland right now a data center Maryland sales and use tax exemption incentive program. So we are incentivizing data centers to come here and pay our workers an X amount of wage. And that's something that will need to be tackled at a state level.
But just to piggyback, so we're trying to put the incentives out there for people to come, but we're not putting in place the oversight to make sure they're going to be doing things correctly, is what you're saying.
Correct. You hit that on the head.
Yep.
Okay.
And I would just
and
add in, sorry, one other thing is you really need transparency too. And that's critical because you can't really have any kind of effective mitigation or oversight if you don't actually know what's happening. So.
Right.
and
Dave, you had something?
yeah, I was just going to piggyback, and it comes really off of what Julia is saying. Right now, the state of Maryland really doesn't know how many data centers we really have. I have provided that to state agencies, and they kind of rely on the climate justice wing to provide that, which is really kind of scary because this is something that we need to know at a state level. And so and that talks about not only how many data centers, but how much electricity they're using, how much water they're using, how many diesel generators that they have. So all that is not aggregated at the state level. And again, the data center study bill was vetoed by the governor. Uh, so these are all things that we need to keep track of. And then at the state level, we need to actually monitor how much electricity is going to be used and really trying to figure that out aggregately. Can Maryland afford to use that much electricity? And what is it going to do to ratepayers? So those are studies and things that need to be approved at the state level and tracked at a state level. So that's things that we really need to push out at the state level. And a lot of us are really working on that. Unfortunately, uh, somewhat this is a race to the bottom. It is all the states are saying we need revenue. We've got these big companies out there who are the richest companies in the world saying we want to build in your state, give us tax incentives, and just let us go. And they hire the best lobbyists, they hire the best people, lawyers, and everything else. And so we're fighting a very much uphill battle. And every state right now is saying we need revenue. Every county is saying we need revenue. So this is seen as one of those magic beans that's going to deliver everything for you, except for when you peel that back and say, what is it going to do to rates? What is it going to do to water? Another concern is noise pollution, which is all happens at a local level. So the state doesn't control really and monitor noise pollution. But again, these are loud facilities that have a lot of cooling mechanisms. They have diesel generators. So those are questions you can ask at a local level of how are you going to monitor noise pollution that is 24/7? This isn't a typical industry where it comes on and off and things like that, like having a hospital
Mhm.
with a diesel generator next to you. These are things that happen 24/7.
And you
And
can
this,
tell the difference, because at
Well,
night, when it starts to quiet down, you can really hear what really makes noise in your community. And, I've heard the stories
Right.
about how people say it keeps them awake, it gives them anxiety and different things like that. And, coupled with all the other health conditions that we have here in this county, I know they were speaking about if Landover wasn't the site, then, Brandywine would possibly be the site. And I know that's going to be absolutely no, for many people in that area. And it's how do we find the right location, because you don't want to encroach on the farmers because of what the perceived problem issue with that. And they're already trying to have available land that's affordable. And then you also don't want to put them in dense populous cities because of all the other problems they're having. And then the environmental issues with the green space and the canopy. So where can they fit?
so
some,
that so that's a
go,
great question, and I'll just
Mhm.
highlight that we've already zoned so much data center space. I mean, Maryland has as well with Quantum Loop. I mean, that's a massive facility. And so I would say we already have places for them to fit. Let's let those build out and see how much space we really need left. I mean,
Mhm.
just for perspective, here in Virginia, we have about 60 million square feet. We have the largest data center market in the world, three times the next largest, which is Beijing. And it's like one third of the entire North American market. We have in the pipeline another 350 million square feet. For
Mhm.
equivalencies, that's about 2,000 Walmart supercenters. And then you have in that pipeline for the energy to serve all that is 47 gigawatts. So 47 gigawatts, I mean, the entire load of Dominion, which is all the way, it's the east side of Virginia, the populated side of Virginia, is 23 gigawatts right now for everything, for everybody. And the
And that's
data center
daily?
load for what?
Is that daily?
No, so this is 23 gigawatts at any moment in time. Needs to be, it's like the peak load that is
Mm,
necessary. The grid has to be able to carry 23 gigawatts.
right.
And so, and that's like your hottest day in
Mhm.
Virginia. So it's going to be like the peak. Um, right now with this 47 gigawatts, you would be taking an industry that is currently at about 6 gigawatts of that 23, so about a quarter of that energy usage is for data centers. You would be making them over half of the entire grid, actually be more than that of the grid, 47 gigawatts compared to the rest of the grid, which is what, like 17 gigawatts. I mean,
Ooh,
that's like mind-boggling. That's absolutely, I mean, it took
right.
us 100 years to build out the grid to the size it is now. So I think we have enough space, is my point. That's all.
What and but this isn't in a rural area, correct? This isn't close to by residential areas, right?
All the load that I'm talking about.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, no, it's right next to, I mean, so it's all over the state. And if you did like we've done tours of the area, you couldn't even see
Mm-hmm.
all of it if you wanted to in a single day because it's all scattered throughout the state. But there's a very heavy
Oh,
cluster in this area called Data Center Alley, which has
mm-hmm.
over 100 data centers and it's surrounded by residential. And to get power to it, we are at the point of trying to plow transmission lines, 500 kV transmission lines. So that's like that's the biggest ones that you see in Maryland through residential subdivisions. And one of the routes that's been proposed by Dominion Energy will take someone's home. So that's where we've gotten to. It's either take someone's home, go right up next to a school, which of course the parents aren't very happy about and the school's not happy
Right.
about, or go over people's businesses and take their businesses. So, I mean, we've gotten really, like, we're really actually taking people's
Wow.
property at this point here in Loudoun County. And so these data centers are right up next to residential, they're right up next to schools. One of the sites is got ball fields right next to it, and there's 106 diesel generators right up next to it.
And these aren't small diesel generators that might power your house in the event. These are the size of train cars. And the site that Julie was just talking about, we were there last week, and you would turn and see all of the diesel generators, and you would turn, and there were people on a playground uh, with their strollers, with their kids, trying to play baseball right there. So they are really abutting right next to where we all live, work, and play. And I think to answer your original question, I there have to be some stipulations about where we can put them, especially the thing I wanted to bring up was environmental justice. So I think it's
Mhm.
really easy for folks to say, oh, why don't we put them in the areas where we've always had heavy industrial uses? Let's put them where we've had factories or we've had oil refineries, but that is not as simple of an answer
Right.
as it actually is. And I think it's one
It's
that people
compounding.
often present. Yes. And like there
Yeah.
are communities who
So,
live there who have been impacted by all
mhm,
of those heavy industrial uses already, and it's not fair to them to continue polluting their air and water.
right. Well,
Yeah.
that's the question I was going to ask. Do we have any data showing health impact on drinking water? Do we have that data?
So we do not have data on the impact to drinking water, like water quality. What we do have data about is water consumption. In aggregate, not from specific data centers, but in aggregate, we know in Loudoun County that the water usage has increased drastically, and we've now it's about 10% of our water usage goes to data centers. So that's a huge amount of the Potomac. And there's been a study by the Potomac Interbasin Commission where they evaluated what does the future, like they projected into the future, how much water could be taken from the Potomac. And they estimate that by, God, I think it's 2030. I'm pretty sure it's 2030. We could be at a third of DC's water usage, peak water usage, could be used by data
Wow.
centers from the Potomac.
And that money is to pay for that, that's going to be spread across the citizens or the
Well, yeah, it's your
ratepayers, as we're
water
calling
utility
them.
bill potentially could go up to, accommodate that additional water usage. But I think the bigger concern is the water supply and the fact that when we hit drought days, like we have right now, we have a drought that's impacting Maryland, Virginia, and West
Hmm.
Virginia. Um, when we have a point where they're asking residential to,
Hmm.
minimize their water usage and the data centers are still using water, people are going to start to get really upset. And that's happening. That's not far-fetched. That's happening in Texas right now. People are really upset that the data centers in Texas are continuing to use their regular amount of water, but they're being asked to conserve their water usage. And especially the farmers are being asked to conserve their water usage for irrigation.
You know what we really should be asking people is to conserve their usage of certain software and programs because, and Angie, you brought it up earlier. You said that, it's speculative. We don't know exactly what this industry is going to do. And I will push back, not, in a nice way and say that I don't trust people out here, to do the right thing because I am looking at these videos now. You say enough, to store cat videos for a lifetime, but now they're creating cat videos and creating themselves as cats, and it's such a trendy thing. Every other day there's a new AI that comes out, and people are being creative with it, and it's a good thing because I mean, who doesn't find a new toy and don't want to play with it? But there's no laws around it. And actually, I think it's just going to be loose regulation for a few years
Well,
based on, the
yeah,
new
until people
legislation.
start
So,
showing up with cancer. It'll be there'll be no regulations until we start seeing people showing up with sorts of diseases. I do have a
well, hold on
question
a
about
second because
something
I
that
really wanted them to answer that question though.
okay.
How do we get to a point where we are talking about sustainable usage of AI, so that we won't have to have all these massive data centers? Is that a
Well,
possibility?
Yeah, I think
that
that's
may
a
happen.
really good question, and I think that that is really the heart of when I mentioned the bubble. That's really what I'm kind of getting at
Hmm.
is that right now there is no cost associated with
Right.
when you go to make yourself an AI superhero figure or something. You're not paying anything. That is free, and it's really not free. And we're finding
Mhm.
out that it's not free. And I mean, there's a market aspect to this. Like if you obviously there's a public health impact and there's an environmental impact, which are absolutely critical, and that's what we're talking about. But I would also say that there's a market aspect to this where companies are supposed to be profitable, and at a certain point, they actually have to be profitable. And right now, OpenAI is far from profitable. And so there's that aspect, which is why I say it's a bubble. But in terms of the public health impact and the environmental impact, we really need to force these companies to embrace that full cost and the full cost of their energy infrastructure. Because right now we're
Hmm.
subsidizing it, just like Dave talked about. We're paying for the transmission
Hmm.
lines, we're paying huge portions of those new generation facilities, and we're not the drivers. Just so you guys understand,
Right.
our energy usage is actually on the decline, at least here in Dominion territory, for the next 5 years because of energy efficiency gains that have been made by residential sector. And so I would say that we should not be taking on this huge burden of new generation
Right.
facilities that are not necessary for our energy usage. That should be being covered by the industry. And if they had to pay that full cost, then maybe they wouldn't be able to keep
Subscriptions.
offering all this freeware, you know?
Right.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Right. And they would be more efficient. I have a question though, because one of the things I know when Sherman and I went to the forum that we had in Fort Washington, they told us that we weren't going to have to worry uh, um, about some of the I think you were talking about a lot of the renewable energy forms that are going to be used. And it said everything would be done fiber optic underground, so we wouldn't have to worry about sound issues. We wouldn't have to worry about people, complaining about air rights. What is the difference? Does it, I guess I'm asking the question is more, is that possible to do this all underground like they're telling the people here in Prince George's County?
Well, you look at things like fiber optic is most likely going to be run underground, but fiber optic doesn't make any noise. You do have some pollution uh, that we had really problems with running fiber optic in Frederick, where people didn't obey the Maryland Department of and the environment laws when they put it in. But the big sound and noise is the external things. It's the cooling mechanisms on top of the data centers. It's the diesel generators. The only way to circumvent that is to put up massive sound barriers, trees, and everything else, and really get it away from residential people themselves. Uh, the other thing is, uh, data center people promise a whole lot, but will they deliver what they're promising? You can see video after video of out there of people not promising what they said they're going to deliver on, especially around data centers. So a lot of them say
Mhm.
we're going to use sustainable electricity, but where are they going to get it from? Well, sometimes they buy it in the open market and they're not building new stuff, they're just buying what's already there. So in the past, I was using that clean energy. Now Google buys that clean energy so they can claim it. So I'm using dirty energy. So it's not, it's a sum zero gain, and we're all losing because of this. And they're claiming that they're sustainable. So you really have to
Right.
pull down the details and see exactly where they're getting this, what they're claiming, and what commitments they're going to make to that claim versus they make the claim and then 3 years later they didn't do it. What is the county going to do as far as a penalty? Is there a clawback clause or is there anything else going on? If they said they're going to bring in 1,000 jobs, permanent jobs, 5 years from now, and they only have 20 people on site, what are you going to do as a county to say, hey, you really
Right.
violated an agreement here? You have to have really oversight and long-term agreements to make sure
Mhm.
that their commitments are solid.
So then it sounds like, Dave, what you're saying to me, this pitch given to us that everything is going to be via fiber optics is not really true. It just can't happen that way. There's some external things that have to happen.
Yeah, fiber optics are only used for the data transmission. That's the
Okay.
only part of the fiber optics. They still are going to have massive amount of computers, massive amount of electrical use, noise, water use. So that's just a small portion of how do they get the information out of the data center to the World Wide Web. That's where the fiber optics is used.
Mhm.
Gotcha.
Yeah. And
I also,
go ahead.
oh, I was just gonna go back to your earlier point, Sherman, about like what do we do to change people's personal habits. Um, I I, I often
It's getting
get on a
ridiculous.
soapbox. What was that?
It's getting ridiculous.
I've seen those AI slot videos too. I've heard the weird like TikTok sounds that people are making with AI, and it's difficult for me not to grit my teeth because I am doing data center advocacy all day, every day, and and I understand that the cloud doesn't live in the cloud and that someone's water is being evaporated when we do stuff like that, but not everyone understands that, and I do think it is good to keep our focus on who the actual people who are hurting us here. It's not people who are making little videos. It's the corporations.
True.
They We need more regulations to ensure that they're being good community partners, and I don't think that is just going to come out from persecuting people who are using AI in their daily lives. Also, at this point, it's so difficult to avoid using AI. I have turned it off on
Yeah.
every single device that I have, and still every Google
It
Hmm.
search
pops
that
up
I
today,
do,
right?
Yeah, the
Yeah,
suffering. It's like I
Mm.
could feel really guilty about that and feel like giving up, or I could go, okay, I've done the best that I can in this moment. I'm going to keep pushing for the most profitable, richest multinational corporations to do their job so I don't have to bear these burdens.
But see, at
Yeah.
this point, it's going to be challenging because um, I keep referencing the law. I believe that Trump passed a law, or they were trying to get it passed, that they didn't want any legislation surrounding AI or anything like that for like 3 or 4 years or something like that. And right now, I just feel like they're just getting everybody used to deep fakes or different stuff like that, and the intermediary. But because I can't fathom why. So, is that just state, or can I mean federal, or can state create laws and not encroach on that order?
So that order did not pass.
Oh,
That
okay.
was
Good. Okay.
proposed by Ted Cruz. If you're talking about what I think you're talking
I
about.
think so, yeah.
Yeah, so Ted Cruz out of Texas had proposed, I think he actually still has a bill out there floating around called the Sandbox Bill or something like that, that would preempt state authority and make it so that localities couldn't have laws regulating AI. And that's all points of AI, which was, taking away the ability to have regulations around how the AI is actually used and like societal kind of impacts, and also the data centers and the construction and things like that.
Mm.
I believe that there was a lot of pushback, specifically on the how AI is used kind of regulations,
Mhm.
because people actually, even in the Republican side, were getting very concerned about, well, wait a second, this is being used for really bad things like porn and things like
Mhm.
that, and we don't really want that kind of stuff out there. But I would say that there wasn't enough attention put onto the data center side and taking away localities' ability to regulate on that
right.
you
Yeah,
know,
see, I didn't know that portion of it,
and
until
so
this.
but it's
Yeah,
still out there, and I think it's really good for your listeners to know that it's still out there, because that is something we need to be telling our state elected or federal officials that we do not want to see passed. We need to make sure that that federal preemption does not happen, because it will be disastrous for localities. You would not be able to do any kind of protections for your community, and it's going to be a huge race to the bottom if
yeah,
we pass something
that's.
like that.
Mhm.
Yeah, I have another question, because again, my concern, being a realtor, my concern is the physical effects that it appears that we're not tracking. And I don't know what is the urgency behind that. But I think about the power fields that were built by residential communities. And years later, when people start experiencing dizziness and um, digestive issues and other things like that some are saying could be associated with this. I mean, is how do we create the urgency so that this type of information is starting to be tracked? I don't think, the fact that we've had these data centers out here that long, I'm sure that there's some data that we can collate to see any of these types of effects.
Tanya, I'd love to send you maybe a study that might help answer some of these questions, but I actually was looking this up today. This is about the public health costs of the backup diesel generators that are in Nova right now, that are in Northern Virginia. So already in Prince George's County, we have paid $8.9 million in health-related costs because of the air pollution caused from Northern Virginia. And I'm happy to send you along these emission graphs, but something that really stood out to me within the study is that the emissions from data centers in Nova are the equivalent to the emissions of all the cars in California. And just think
Oh,
about that concentrated in one place. Um, uh, Hopefully that starts to get at the answer to your question, but I'll send this along to you for your own reading.
okay, yeah, that does. That's troubling
Yeah,
for
thank you so much.
California.
And I just want to say, what a conversation this was tonight. I am truly appreciative for everyone who have joined us tonight. This is a reminder that progress doesn't have to come at the expense of data centers. whether it's in Virginia, leading reforms efforts, or Maryland deciding what kind of growth we want to pursue. One thing is clear: our communities deserve a seat at the table when big decisions are being made about our environment, our infrastructure, and our future. And I want to give a big thank you to our guest tonight, Julie Bolthouse with
Yes,
the
thank
Virginia
you.
Data Center Reform Coalition, Angie McCarthy from Nature For It, and David Arndt with the Maryland Legislative Coalition Climate Justice Wing. Thank you all for the work that you do, ensuring climate policy is rooted in justice, equity, and truth. Thank you all.
And Sherman, we're
Thank
sharing
you.
their websites right on our
I can
page.
I can put it in the chat. Yes. Yeah, I definitely
Okay.
in the chat and then also on our webpage. But again,
Okay.
thank you all so
All right.
much.
Yeah, thank you for having us.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Take care.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Yep, bye.
Bye.
All right, everybody. That was a very enlightening conversation because a lot of the stuff I had
That's
not known. I
troubling.
did research a lot of it, but um the more and more you think about it, I don't see how, we will do this, but I know as a community, we will have these conversations and determine, what's going to be best for us here in the county. Because as, I mentioned earlier, the likelihood of putting those in, the populated areas are slim to none. I would never advocate for a data center to be
Well,
um, there, but then have the southern
but
part of the county, and that's going to be a whole issue in itself. So, when it comes to zoning,
yeah,
I can't wait to see what that looks like. Hmm.
Understanding now, they told us. I guess I don't agree with the data centers in Landover.
Hmm.
Um, I wasn't as concerned when they kept telling us, "Oh, no, 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 everything's got to be underground." But now,
Hmm.
knowing today, that's only a small part of the equation,
Hmm.
and it gets to the transparency because
Because it's
that
still
was
the
not
the
told to
cooling.
us.
Yeah. Hmm.
Yeah, and the consultant that was there was doing more to push the idea down our throats as rather than, in my opinion, rather than to inform when we were at Bach Road. And I feel
Well,
that even more now after hearing this information, it was a slanted presentation.
they wanted to see how we felt about data centers and see what we were going to bring to the conversation.
No, they
Uh,
wanted to see what slop we would eat that they were pouring. I'm sorry. Yes, I'm back.
Yeah, they could have provided a lot more information before we even did, the breakouts and stuff like that. But we are where we are, and there's a lot of people in this community that are pushing for it. Lavon had to drop off. She was having technical difficulties, and for everyone who was watching the stream, again, I do apologize for some of the technical stuff, and it seems like. There's some latency and other stuff going on. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to upload this video to our platform on Facebook, and it should be able to stay there because the lives are deleted after I think 30 days. So this one will be available on Facebook until the end of time once I upload it, and also onto YouTube because I want to make sure that our viewers are able to watch it as well. Um, I want to say, Tanya, do you have anything? But I know you do.
Well, first I want to say thank you to everyone for your condolences sent and just the love that was shown to my family. It's as some of you know, or some of you are learning today, I lost my only and baby brother on September 9th. Lost a very close um, family member through marriage, but I've known her all her life. I've known her since before she was born. Lost her tragically to an accident with a drunk driver, and then my stepmom lost her on September 28th. So there was a lot going on in my family, but I guess I still kept up with Prince George's County, still was reading what was going on in the county, and still have to say I'm a little disappointed with uh, the behavior and conduct of many of our elected officials.
Not you about to come
Not
back and,
watching
and
out.
chastise them.
Oh, not watching out for the people, and everything is a 4, 7, 8 ring circus. When you're busy doing what you're supposed to do, you don't always have to toot your horn.
Mhm.
Um, but I would love to see, with all these great things that you're doing, I would love to see where we are with our deficit. Show me that. I would love to see where we are with the deficit
So
and
in
cutting
the
that
100
down.
days discussion that Aisha Braveboy did, County Executive Braveboy did, she spoke about um, their efforts, and I believe they renegotiated a contract that was $31 million, I believe, or something like
Yeah,
that.
but
So
when you have a $200 million deficit, so that's a and growing, so that's a drop in the bucket.
it's a
Show
start.
us that, well, stop spending. That's a start.
Yeah, well,
The
it's not
start
even the
is
fact of
stop
spend.
spending.
It's how they're spending.
You know,
It's not
I would
just.
like to know, I would
Mhm.
like to know what printing company is getting paid to print all of those colorful flyers and leaflets that we are getting from our council members. Because, I remember,
Or we have to look and see
I
what the budget was from one year to the next
no,
for
I
the
want to know
media
what
marketing.
company is being, I want to know what
Oh,
company
I
is
see what you're
being
saying.
paid
I see what you're
to
saying.
print all those colorful flyers. I
Hmm.
would really like to know because I get about 4 or 5. I came back from um, from Georgia, after my brother's service, and I got to be home for a couple days before I had to come back down for
Hmm.
my stepmom's. And the number of color advertisements that I received in the mail just from my county council person.
Who
I
was
want to
that?
know who is, oh, Edward Burroughs. I want to know who's printing all this because I've worked for some of the largest law firms in the world, and we had to get a justification to print things in color for clients who are paying some attorneys $1,000 an hour, and we still had to get permission to
Well, this
print
is
in color.
government.
Yeah, we need to know these are our tax dollars. And we need to understand this stuff isn't cheap. But what's even worse, our government is becoming tribal in their politics. We are getting to where it is the District 8, District 7, District 4, District 1.
Well,
Our
I'm going to
elected
push back on
officials
with
are
you on
so,
that,
but let me
Tanya.
finish. Let me finish. Hold on, let me
Mhm.
finish. Our district our county council is supposed to go out and find out what the needs are within their districts across the county and come together. And there is supposed to be consensus building. There's not enough tax dollars. We don't have enough tax dollars for everybody to say, I want this for my district because we've always been disadvantaged or
Well, they
we
said they are in sync
everybody
now.
forgets about us. You
They,
can't
they
be in
said they're.
sync with all of these separate events. That's not
Yeah,
sync.
the
That's
council is in
separate.
sync with the executive branch, and they are
Oh, you're talking
play
about that
brother and
fake
sister.
unity? Okay, you're talking about the fake unity. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about spending our tax dollars. I'm not talking about this show. Tax dollars in a way that's almost bankrupting this county. Show me. I just want a town hall. Y'all having town halls doing everything else. You want to have a town
Set the
hall
budget.
on the school system. You want to have a town hall on the justice system. You want to have a town hall on apartments. You want to have a town hall on everything but our budget. Have a town hall meeting on that. I mean,
Well, it sounds sexy.
wait a minute, we are paying Sean Joseph enough money that we don't need you all tooting his horn. He needs to be showing his own worth. We don't need
It's
y'all
not
doing all this
sexy to
shooting his
have a
horn.
conversation about the budget. As a matter of fact, there is. I posted it in CAG. It was the I think Park and Planet, their budget. They're having a listening session or something to that tune, and
Hmm.
I don't know if how many people gonna show up. You see how it is when we go out to different events. When we went out into had a budget conversation, as many people as much as people complain in our communities about the lack thereof and about the services and resources and et cetera, you know, who was the loudest voice at the budget hearing?
Well, because they're afraid of being there, because they're afraid of losing
The
all
pet
of these
people.
frills that you're getting, the $800 a month, the crab fees. Come on, you don't have to. Just they're so afraid of losing
I'm about
this,
to pull
but
a
you don't
Stephen Miller on you.
you know, but you don't realize what you're really losing. Those the grass cutting, it ain't free. That grass
That's
cutting
your
ain't
mental
free.
health. That's your mental health services.
It ain't free. That's my
That's your,
point. It ain't free.
what I'm
It's
saying
costing
is,
us.
yes, it's costing you your mental health services.
Oh, is that what you're saying? Okay, I
Yes.
got you. And you're right. You're right. It is doing that.
It's
And
costing you your public
Danny,
safety.
oh, I was going to ask my father to come. Asked my father if he wanted to just say hi. But Daddy, yeah, I say Daddy, y'all. I say Daddy. That's how call my daddy. But
Oh yeah, I can
I,
barely
you know,
see
it's
you.
you know
And you
what?
talk about
Oh,
bring
hold on.
somebody else on.
No, no, hold on. I'm gonna take care of that right now. I'll be right back.
We ain't got nothing but 5 minutes left. Where's she going?
Oh, here's my daddy. Daddy, come say hi to our CAG folks, our CAG people. This is my 93-year-old dad. See, I'm talking prophetically where he's going. Come say hi, Daddy. Come say hi. Yeah, this is my the chat.
Hi, German.
Hello, hello.
This is my handsome daddy, 93 years old.
Good to see you.
I'm just complaining a little bit, daddy. You know me. Okay. But y'all got to start thinking this stuff isn't free. The grass cuts, then paying your property taxes, them this food as medicine. None of these initiatives are free, y'all. They cost. And
Mhm.
they're costing your tax dollars. So remember, every time they give you something, remember when you go to motor vehicle and have to pay this extra stuff, remember all these extra taxes that we're paying on our telephone. This is making up. So it's like they give you something and and at the same time they're standing behind you and grabbing it right back out of your pocket. It's not free. So
Yeah.
we need a town hall on how you are going to reduce this well, I know it's more than $200 million, I was told. Somebody
And
told me it's
counting.
yeah, and counting. And the fact that Moody is now warning us again.
Well, there are
They've
people who
already
say that
downgraded us.
that's only one credit agency, and there are two others who have reaffirmed us, and we shouldn't be worried about it.
You know what? Right. See, that's spoken like a true um person that keeps NFSs on their account. That's what that's spoken like. Need I say
Well,
more? I'm
if
back.
tonight's discussion taught us anything, it's that accountability starts locally. When people ask questions, read the fine print, and speak up when things don't add up. So I challenge everyone watching to keep learning, keep showing up, and keep
Yeah.
pushing for smarter, more transparent development in our communities. You can rewatch these episodes or any of our lives, um, or any other lives that we have done anytime on our YouTube channel. It's the at CAG Chat. And of course, stay tuned for more episodes where we shine light on stories that shape Prince George's County and beyond. I'm Sherman Hardy, joined by Tanya Wingfield. Thank you for joining us tonight on CAG Chat. Until next time, stay informed.
They thought of my dad too now, Sherman.
All right, Pops. I'm sorry. See you later.
Bye. Yeah, this is our bi-weekly thing that we do. That's great.
Mhm.